In 2022, I won a last one standing race, and I had only been running seriously for about 2.5, maybe 3 years at that point, and I did not taper leading up to this race. In fact, the next day I ran a half marathon after the 100 miler, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but I really want to walk through what was going on in my life and kind of why I didn't do that. And there's a key takeaway I'm going to share at the end. I want to lead up to it and share what I got out of this experience, and it helps you when things go wrong. That's the point of this video is what do you do when it wasn't ideal or things went wrong, whether in a race, in training, whatever it might be. So I ran this 100-mile race. I had tried it, I think, 2 different times. So the first time I ran it, I made it 66 miles, I think. And then the next year, I finished it. And then this year, I'm talking about I won it. And I had been very isolated throughout this running. I didn't have a lot of running friends. I was kind of in this stage of going from not even like a partier, but someone who wasn't that active. Like I did stuff on the side, but I didn't have friends that were active. And then as I moved into getting active, I was by myself for a while until I started going to running groups and meeting people, and then I would meet even more people. And so I ran by myself for the most part and was very alone. Well, right before this 100-mile race, I had met a good friend of mine who is now a good friend of mine. We've ran hundreds of miles together, and somehow I figured out about this challenge that this group would do. So it was called No Rest November. Basically, you'd run a, 10K every single day in November, no time off. And then when you get to December, you add a kilometer every single day until there's one person left in the group. So meaning on December 1st, you have 11K. On December 2nd, you have 12K. On December 3rd, you have 13K. And so I had already signed up for this 100-mile race. And then this challenge also sounded kind of cool. And so what I did was I just kept running every single day, did the 10K every day in November. And then I ran about 40, almost 50 miles the week leading into this 100-mile race, which was concerning to me because normally I would have taken it much easier. And I had been running a ton leading up to this race too. And so I went into it obviously wondering, like, am I going to be okay? Did I overdo it the week of? I already felt tired because I'd done a 10K every single day the month before. And I think it was like December 9th or something like that when the race was. So I'd already been stacking on kilometers onto the run. And so in a last one standing format, you start the loop together, and if you get done within the time frame or a little bit early, you can take a rest. You're not allowed to keep going on the race, and then you all start the next loop together. So this race was a 6-mile loop. We did 17 laps, and that total 102 miles. So I think this is probably one of the reasons why I was able to win it, because if I had it had been a typical 100 where you go from point A to point B, I'm sure people would have just gotten much further. But all I had to do was got through 16 laps. And then on that last lap, I just had to give it hell. I had to run as fast as I could. And I finished that last 6-mile loop. So, meaning I had ran 96 miles throughout the race. That last 6 miles, I finished in about 45 minutes, which is a great 10K time within its own right. And especially considering running 96 miles before that and all the running I had done before that, I was just impressed. It was a great day. It was one of the best days of my life. That is the race that started my running journey for the most part. Like, I had done half marathons, but when I started learning about ultras, this race is the one I picked because it was here in where I live in this city, and I just, it created who I am now when it comes to running and fitness. What's the point of this? It's a cool story. I get excited about it. I love talking about these things, but what's the point? The point is that day, regardless of the win, really changed my mind in a very good way when it comes to things not being ideal and not being optimal. So what I'm telling you is I won a 100-mile race. I had no taper. I didn't have very many rest days. Any rest days, I guess. Like, there were lighter days, I guess, but like at this point, I had not had a rest day in a long time, and it wasn't optimal, right? Like, the taper is supposed to be ideal, and sure, maybe it wasn't an incredibly competitive race. It's not like we were against pros, but there was a good 90 people in the race. I think the big takeaway that I reflect on this often when things aren't ideal in my training or racing, is that things weren't ideal and I had a great day. It worked out. It wasn't ideal and I still won. It wasn't ideal and I still finished. And so what's really meaningful about that experience in that race to me is I I was able to find a way and made it work even when it wasn't optimal. And so as much as I take things very seriously and I try and be optimal and I try and train properly and eat enough and get sleep and whatnot, things can still work out really well in your favor with when it's not optimal or it's not ideal. And so that's been very helpful, because when things go wrong, I can remember the time I won a 100-mile race when things weren't ideal, when I didn't taper, when I was already tired, right? And so that's my experience, right? I hope you can find something that you succeeded in when it wasn't ideal. This is why I like running streaks or doing extreme challenges, is because if you are very particular about being optimal and never pushing the limits when you have to push your limits or when things aren't ideal, you haven't practiced being able to work through that as much. And so, like, another example, right? Like, after that 100-mile race, because I was still in this No Rest November, Sudden Death December challenge, the next day I had to run a half marathon. That was the amount of kilometers we were at. So I ran that 100-mile race, won it. The next day I had to go out and do 13 miles, 13.1. I ran that in like an 8:30 pace, which was just insane to me. Like, I have the Strava post to prove it, but it was just insane to me that I ran a 100-mile race and then I ran a half marathon that was faster than my first half marathon time by like half an hour. And not ideal, not optimal, incredible chance of injury and getting hurt. And thank God I wasn't, right? Because I got to continue to run and work through that challenge. I ended up taking second. We ran all the way until January 5th or something like that. Not ideal, not optimal, but those are things that I would not change. I am proud of more than being optimal. And anyways, I feel like I'm kind of talking in circles. I want you to be able to find things, or just lean on my experience of things can still be incredible or better than you ever hoped when it's not ideal. And mentally, I think runners, me included, are really good at getting freaked out when things don't go well, when we have pains in the taper, when, we slept in and didn't get to run 10 miles, we only ran 6, right? Like, those are things that, yes, you should learn from and be more disciplined or whatever, but it shouldn't be a reason why things don't work out, why you don't PR, why you don't finish the race. I think you can find a way to look at that and be like, you know what, yeah, this does suck, it's true, I wanted it to be different, but things can still work out in my favor when things aren't ideal. It's happened to me countless times, and so I hope you can have your own experiences, or just remember, hey, I won a 100-mile race and didn't taper, and I ran a half marathon the next day that was faster than my first half marathon time. So hopefully that's something you can get out of this if you haven't experienced something like this for yourself. I think if you think hard enough or put yourself through enough, someday you'll find things work out in your favor when it wasn't ideal, when it wasn't optimal. For example, I PR'd a half marathon. It was like a 1:18, and I had ran 120 miles the week before, and that whole week, including the half marathon, I was at another 120-mile week. So meaning I had ran like 100 miles the week of that half marathon. So the point is, like, don't freak out. It'll be okay, even if it isn't optimal or ideal. So if you like running content, that's what this channel is about. I share stories, talk about what I've learned, things I'm trying, the races I'm training for. Whoa, just got blurry. And so I appreciate you sticking it out to watch this video. If you like this stuff, consider subscribing, and if not, I still hope you got something out of this video, and I hope I get to see you in another video sometime soon. Peace.